want to share about the importance of taking time to process your grief. Anytime we experience major change in our life, it can trigger feelings of grief and loss. The summer of 2021 was a very difficult one for me. On June 1st of that summer, my husband became ill and had to have major surgery. At the time, I just remember thinking, I just want life to get back to normal. And then on June 29th, my mom died suddenly after having a stroke. And I felt like I was barely recovered from my husband's health issue, and I was getting on a plane to go bury my mom. And then 2.5 weeks later, after I got back from my mom's funeral on July 18th, my dad passed away. And I remember just feeling like I was in a fog. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, and just thinking, how could all of this be happening at once? Just so much change. And I want to stress here that, grief is normal. When we go through difficult seasons of loss, that's a normal response. And if you think about it, today, all of us are grieving something. It may be a lost opportunity, maybe a loss of a person, or a loss of a job, or a dream, or maybe the loss of your health. It could even be the loss of an animal. But we need to take time to process our griefs and our losses. So a good self-coaching question for you today, and for me as well, is to ask, what does this loss mean to me? So when we go through times of grief and loss, there's a meaning attached to that. And part of I call it good grief, being able to grieve well, is to ask ourselves, what did this loss mean to me? And to be able to sit and maybe journal about that, and to be kind to yourself and allow the meaning of the loss to surface so you can grieve well. And experiencing grief can sometimes make us think, why would God allow this pain and suffering? And I think this is a question that can really trip Christians up. I've noticed this over the years. How can there be a good God when there's so much pain and suffering in the world? People ask this. But it's important to remember that God is not the author of our suffering. We can cause our own suffering. Natural consequences can cause suffering. Sometimes other people's sin. Sometimes just being on planet Earth, being in a broken world, can cause suffering. And suffering can come from sin, but also from brokenness. And really, God cannot be held responsible for that. And I want to say that one thing I've noticed is that in my life, that beauty helps to balance out the brokenness. It can heal what is broken in this world, what's broken in our life. And again, God did not create the broken. That's the result of the fallen world. But God redeems all the broken. And then God can use our suffering to transform us into His image, right? He allows some suffering for good. We see that with Jesus dying on the cross. John the Baptist was imprisoned and then beheaded, the years that Paul put in prison. And there's many other stories in the Bible of suffering, what Joseph went through, and God used all those things for good. C.S. Lewis, in his book, The Problem of Pain, he talks about God whispers to us in our pleasure, speaks in our consciences, but shouts in our pains. He says it is His megaphone to rouse a deaf world. Jenny Allen, in her book, Restless, Because You Were Made for More, she said, we can do one of two things with suffering. We can absorb it and let it change us, or we can let it crush us. Suffering will change you, or it will crush you. So I want you to think about that today. What are you going through in your life? Where are you experiencing some pain or suffering? Are you allowing that suffering to change you, or is it crushing you? And I do have an exercise that I do almost daily, and I've offered this to you on feelingfree.org, and it's a gratitude and grief coaching exercise. And this is just a self-coaching exercise that you'll be able to ask yourself and journal about, what is my loss right now? What am I lamenting? What does this loss mean to me? And where do I even feel this in my body? Sometimes we feel that in our shoulders, or we feel it as a pain in our heart or a pit in our stomach. We say that sometimes the body knows before our brain. So ask yourself, where am I experiencing that pain and that loss? And then we balance that out with, what am I grateful for in my life right now, right? Because we always carry joy and sorrow in our hearts. I wear 2 necklaces here. This is my mom's cross, and she wore this until she died. And when she died, I wear it now because I like to say that she traded her cross for her crown, so she doesn't need it anymore, so I have it. And then I have this necklace that says joy. That's actually my middle name. That's my identity, is to be joyful. And so I have both joy and sorrow in my necklaces that I wear, and it really represents that for our lives. We're always going to have joy, and we're going to have sorrow. And we'll have that until we trade our cross for our crown. So I want you to think about that in your life today. What are the areas of joy? Maybe the areas that you have gratitude for. And then what are those areas of suffering or pain, or maybe your laments? And that actually good mental and emotional health is to be able to process both and to be able to accept that we have a lot of joy in our life and we have a lot of sorrow. But we know that God causes those to come together, and He causes them to work together for His good and for our good. So I hope today, whatever you're going through, that you can find things to be grateful for, but you also take time to process your grief. So I'll see you next time.